Welcome into the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Today we are continuing our strategy series. We're going to be taking a look at late QB strategy, early QB strategy, and best player available. So helping getting you guys ready for redraft season and kind of covering all the bases. Last week we looked into zero RB, hero RB. So we're rocking on with some more strategy. Start the show. Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, John McKechnie. That is Mario Puig. This podcast presented by our friends over at Prize Picks. If you're joining us on the live stream or on YouTube, you can see my cool swaggy headphones. I left my Bluetooth headphones back in Maryland, so shout out to the Deltas right here. You like them, Mario?
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh at your misfortune, but I guess I did.
No, it's
I didn't learn that off the air, so I wasn't ready for it now.
It sort of just reoccurred to me as I was looking at myself on the stream, and I'm like, oh yeah, people are going to wonder if those are airplane headphones. They are, because
tour boat headphones.
These headphones were used to watch the James Bond classic Goldfinger on the plane. So I mean, these are running hot already, and I think we've got some more audio gold to give to the listeners today. But essentially, we are going to continue on talking some strategy for your redraft leagues as redraft season is getting ready to heat up a little bit. And if we have time later in the show, we'll check in on our respective Scott Fishbowl drafts, because yours is 15 rounds in, mine is 17 rounds in. You've made some pretty good progress having started on Monday. We started ours on Sunday at the live draft in DC, so we'll get into that a little bit. But we'll kick things off talking about late round quarterback. And in your mind, Mario, what is the definition of late round quarterback, and where does that line kind of start for you as it pertains to this year's ADP?
Well, there's the really expensive tier with, Josh Allen, Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, all those guys. That's the second tier. Maybe we'd call ending with like Anthony Richardson, something like that. And usually anyway, I see Kyler Murray and Joe Burrow go sometime after that, along with Dak Prescott. I guess Dak maybe going about where those two do. So there's probably three tiers you could separate there, maybe. And different people might have different, priorities at quarterback. Maybe late to a person is the third tier. To me, it's not. I think the third tier is actually, I think at least in the case of Kyler and Dak, those are two guys who could finish, I think, in the top 3 or at least 5 for fantasy points scored per game. So certainly if they were to reach that kind of level, no one would feel like they were going to, too light at quarterback with them. But I do think after those three, Kyler, Burrow, Dak, that's probably where it's getting a little bit late to me. Of course, some people would have more extreme definitions yet. Some people would say like, oh no, Jordan Love, that's not late. Late is Jared Goff. And that, some people might want to do that. I wouldn't. I think the streaming thing, of course, could work. It could work in theory. Some years it's maybe easier than others. In Mahomes' first year, he went in usually in like the 12th round of drafts or something like that. That would be an easy way to do it, but that never happens. Usually you're getting more like a Sam Howell or whatever, kind of version of you're getting what you pay for back there. So I think in best ball, it makes sense to do 3 really cheap quarterbacks and just hope that they, put together some medley of useful starts between the 3 of them. But in redraft, I think if I'm going to stream, I still want them to be 2 quarterbacks that I'm somewhat confident in, like I maybe even having like Burrow and Kyler at the same time wouldn't be so bad. But if you can't get guys that good, then it might be worth paying up for one of the really killer quarterbacks who you're playing every single week.
I think our guy Uncle Ted chiming in in the comments section notes that Justin Herbert is kind of a big value this year. I tend to
I agree with that.
agree with that as well, and we'll kind of unpack that here. For me, I think my definition of late QB type of build would start right at QB 11. For according to the ADP, that would be Caleb. But there are some teams where I feel comfortable waiting, grabbing Caleb. We've kind of talked about it on previous episodes. If I am going with that approach where Caleb Williams is the first quarterback that I take, then I want to kind of get another safer, like high floor type of guy shortly thereafter. So someone like a Justin Herbert, a Trevor Lawrence, maybe even a Kirk Cousins, although, obviously there's a little bit of injury concern when it comes to Cousins coming off of that Achilles injury. But, generally I think that's my line. So it's pretty close to yours, where Dak QB9 is sort of that line of demarcation for you. So either way, I think you're able to pull off this strategy. I think it's one that I target one way or the other more often than going with the expensive quarterback. Very rarely am I taking Josh Allen or
Same
Pat
here.
I'm
taking Mahomes a bit though, just because Mahomes tends to go later, and I think he's throwing 5,000 yards, 40 touchdowns this year. But I don't take Mahomes most other years. It's like his price getting low is what has me interested now.
I think so too, and we talked about it when we did a tight end specific episode, probably a little bit after the draft, when we kind of realized that Travis Kelce was a nice value. I think his ADP has climbed just a little bit, but in those particular instances when I knew I could get Kelce and Mahomes on the same team, a stack that you'd be spending your first two picks last year. Not in this case now, in that particular landscape, you can use your third and fourth round selections on that. So it's a little bit easier to stomach that particular stack. But, don't have a ton of Lamar. And I usually it's worthwhile for me to target a Stroud just because I usually try to get one of Nico Collins or Diggs.
That late round quarterback worked last year.
Yeah, that one.
It's kind of the only one, right? I'm trying to remember.
If only I could have transferred all of my Sam Howell exposure to just CJ Stroud.
Even the Howell was pretty good. I mean, I guess that's what the late round would have been. You get Howell and Stroud was the way to do it last year, but it's like, hearing how slim those odds are, I think for this year anyway, for this particular era that we're in, I think for most people, you probably don't want to try the truly, cheap quarterback route unless it's a best ball experiment, because you can, I think, get by with volume there.
So let's dig in a little bit more on some of these guys that starting at Caleb and going down. Where's your line where you think like, okay, this is someone who theoretically I could feel comfortable starting every week? Because to me, I think that line is drawn probably between either Matthew Stafford or Aaron Rodgers at QB 19, QB 20, something like that. And anything after that, I feel like I am taking a fairly significant risk if I have to count on these guys for more than just streaming.
Yeah, so I can't tell how in line with the consensus any of my opinions on these guys might be, but to me, there's a few stinkers that I would want nothing to do with. A couple of them would be like Jaden Daniels, Jared Goff. I love Trevor Lawrence, the player, and I even think he has a decent assemblage of talent around him. But Press Taylor may as well publish his playbook online for everyone to read, because that's how easy it is to decode. And that's just no way to play football. It puts a lot of stress on Lawrence that other quarterbacks don't have to deal with. But it's I think as far as the line goes, to me, it's kind of like Stafford, Herbert, whatever they tend to end up in the order in your particular format. Stafford, I think, if anything, probably goes a little too late, actually. So he'd probably be along with Herbert and to a lesser extent Tua. That's kind of who I'm looking at in that range. Tua is a guy I don't really believe in talent-wise, and I'm even worried about the system of the Dolphins working against tougher defenses such as the Jets. The Jets have had their number the last 2 years, but there have been a lot of games too where Tua, he had whatever, like the 6 touchdown game against the Ravens or something. So he's got enough upside that I think at the theory of playing the matchup between, Tua, Stafford, Herbert, some group of guys like that, Lawrence, that I think, at least in theory, that makes sense to me. It still seems a little difficult to me in practice because you'd have to make a series of, correct guesses successfully in a row. But if you do it, the math should work.
Yeah, I think Stafford is underrated that this year. Like we saw, for several years, it felt like people were drafting him, and really his only viable target was Cooper Kupp. Now he has Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. Like it feels like there's a little bit of
and a lot more run game support too, which I think matters because it keeps them on schedule, keeps them in scoring range, keeps time of possession stable.
Right. So that, like, all of that in mind, and you still have him working in an elite scheme. Really, like the only concern I have with Stafford, other than the fact that he's not going to give you any sort of rushing production, is that he stands in the pocket and he takes some hits. We're
and he's 36.
We're far into his career, so you do worry about him getting banged up, and oftentimes like he will just kind of play through stuff that mere mortals normally wouldn't. So it's like, you have to start him because he's active, but he's pretty gimpy. But I mean, you have a guy that goes, let's see, in like
just look at that cumulative ADP of Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. Like even throwing in Demarcus Robinson, who goes like the 14th, 15th, 16th kind of range. It's like, this is a cumulative ADP of pass catchers that we're projecting for a quarterback whose ADP significantly lags the pass catchers. And the anxiety about injuries is totally reasonable, but it's, I think, also true that some players who go ahead of Stafford just shouldn't, or at the very least, he should go closer to those other picks like Daniels. And why would Stafford going after Goff is just crazy to me. I mean, we just saw 2 years ago, wasn't it, like Stafford had the 40 touchdown season? Like we know he can do that. He did that with like Van Jefferson or something. Like, I know Robert Woods was there, to be fair, but I think Nacua Kupp is enough to believe it's more like the time when they had Kupp and Woods than the any sort of the struggling period from last year, for instance. Like I think it's going to be more like the second half for Stafford last year will be the entire season this year if he and the other two receivers stay healthy.
And I think, again, they're being drafted as though they will. There's confidence there. Nacua, a first round pick in best ball, and Kupp like a mid to late third type of guy. So I mean that's great weaponry to work with. We know that Stafford has a long track record of success. So if you are waiting on quarterback, I feel like he tends to be one of my favorite targets. Before we get a little bit deeper into the late round QB pool, throwing some potential darts, we do have a message from our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states across the country. Prize Picks is really simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. For the record, Mario, I threw out a card last week with 3 picks. Cashed.
Nice. You gonna buy headphones with that winnings?
I could buy decent headphones with those, or 2 pairs of my previous sort of crappy headphones. But either way, look at that. But today I did not have a ticket that I was totally ready to give out, although I am interested in Tanner Houck taking the less on his fantasy points tonight. And let's see, Josh Van. That's a little bit later. That one comes up on a Saturday, and I'll take the more on Albert Suarez. More than 2.5 earned runs. The Cubs are swinging it. It's really hot at Camden Yards. I can attest to that. I was at the yard just 2 nights ago, and the ball is definitely flying there. And Suarez, it's always a little dicey with him. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Download the app today and use code ROTOPOD for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code ROTOPOD, ROTOPOD, for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And pro tip, if you're not signed up at RotoWire, do so, because the prize picks tool over in the picks and props section is legit. You can tailor it to prize picks or anywhere else that you like to use, but we like prize picks, and they've got a constantly updated tool with great projections and great visuals as well for even folks as simple-minded as myself that can fully and easily understand. Let's continue on with a message from our friends over at Blue Wire. And then let's keep rolling. Let's get a little deeper into the weeds here when it comes to the late round quarterbacks. So once we get past Aaron Rodgers, you've got Baker Mayfield, Deshaun Watson, J.J. McCarthy, Will Levis, Geno Smith, Drake May, Bo Nix, Russ, Bryce Young, and Derek Carr. So that's the next 10 up. Who of those guys are you targeting the most?
If they're all the same price, I might be taking Levis of that group, but from what I've seen, Levis tends to go pretty early in that group, maybe even first of that group, I guess usually between him and Geno. But my concern with Geno is not so much that he was like a fraud 2 years ago. I think last year he played well, just had kind of difficulties that he wasn't subjected to the year before. Still, I do worry about decline with someone like him, and I'm also a little worried that the Seahawks didn't fix the main problem, which was the offensive line was just kind of a little sketchy. Not sure if changing the offensive coordinator will help. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But in the case of Levis, I guess it's a little bit. What is it? I guess I'm still optimistic that he'll run more like he did in college, even though it didn't happen last year. So maybe I should adjust that and think of Levis as more of an equal to Geno. But because I usually don't take the quarterback where those two go, what I'm ending up with, even though they're a little bit lower in my rankings, is more so Bo Nix and Russell Wilson. And this is to say my third quarterback in best ball drafts, So I'm not trying to end up in this place in redraft leagues. I don't really want to find myself depending on those guys at any point. But I do think that Nix has probably under-acknowledged upside. And maybe even his floor is a little undersold too, because he's going to start, in my opinion. I don't know if people are still concerned about Stidham or somebody starting for the Broncos, but I don't think that's going to happen. Nix is already 24 or something like that. So,
yeah,
or he's going to turn 24 soon. So, and Peyton can't possibly have the patience to do like another 3 years of this being the worst team, in the AFC kind of bit. There's no way he's sticking around for it. So I think he needs to go with Nix week 1, and he will. And at that point, I'm not exactly expecting a good offense, but I think Nix is an okay prospect. I think he's better than, Jaden Daniels, for instance. But yeah, it's still a kind of lean offense they have with the Broncos, and certainly in the case of the Steelers and Russ, they're not even trying to throw the ball. I'm just banking on a few spike weeks paying off in the last round there. But I do think Russell Wilson will start all year for the Steelers and should have a pretty clean box score, just nothing to speak of, volume wise.
Yeah, Russ is tricky. It's a new offense, new team entirely for him. So I have less exposure to him. Although as time has gone on, I feel like a little bit more confident that Russ starts most of, if not the entire season. But I'm with you where Levis and Nix are kind of my targets if I'm dipping my toes into this end of the pool. I think Levis, he already got some starts under his belt last year. It was obviously fairly uneven, but there were definitely moments where it's like I can see it with this guy. There are also moments where it's like, oh, no wonder I was really low on him in the pre-draft process. But he's got an arm, he's got Hopkins. They added Ridley. They got a new offense in there. I could see it working with Levis, and he no Derrick Henry anymore. Maybe he gets a little bit more involved in the run game as well. So interested there. And then, yes, I do have a decent amount of Bo Nix as well. I'm not buying that this is any sort of like real competition. Whereas like with JJ McCarthy, like I don't think that he's worth taking in redraft because I'm not
Oh
convinced that
yeah,
he starts the whole season, and I'm not convinced that he starts until like the bye week at kind of like the best case scenario,
I think he
honestly.
could go the whole year. I mean, the whole thing always, John, goes back to quarterbacks don't matter, and which is to say, after the first like 5 or 6 quarterbacks, you're mostly those guys after that are interchangeable. What determines their level of success is more the level of support that they have, and yeah, in the case of Levis too, it's worth I guess noticing that the Titans upgraded their offensive line, and it was a huge problem last year. Of course, it was probably one of the worst we've seen in a long time last year. They've added granted, I still don't know what they're going to do at left tackle, but Latham is going to change things where his rep is. Lloyd Cushenberry, Sadiq Charles. So there's some new starters on the line that'll hopefully make it better. And of course, getting Ridley added in and Callahan, probably a more pass. Definitely a much more pass interested offensive coordinator than the ones that Vrabel oversaw.
Yeah, and they actually like have the pieces to like like go that route. And obviously like you delete Derrick Henry from that offense, you have guys like Spears and Pollard. Like there's just no 300 carry back in this backfield anymore. So I think it's just going to be a livelier offense for fantasy outside of the run game now. So there's a lot going in Levis's direction. Do you have any interest in either Baker Mayfield or Deshaun Watson for this year?
If Watson were anything like the player that he was in Houston, it'd be the easiest decision of all time to pick him. But some of the footage from OTAs this year, and of course he struggled the short time that he played before injuries last year. Some of those throws from OTAs, it looks like he's throwing a wiffle ball or something. It's pretty difficult to rationalize. But if he somehow gets better, then and he becomes the player that he used to be, he'll be the biggest steal of the ADP probably, even at quarter among all positions, even at quarterback. Still, I don't really have faith that it happens at this point. Sorry, who was the other one?
Baker Mayfield,
Oh,
because
Mayfield. Mayfield
obviously,
actually, I think he's going to regress from last year, but not a ton. I think he's a really good best ball third quarterback kind of pick, but whereas with Geno and Stafford, I think you'll get good play in 35 pass attempt offenses. I think Mayfield needs to stay closer to 30 to keep the clean numbers, and yeah, I think he won't be able to give you the volume that you need to compete most weeks. So I do. With that said, I probably got to put Mayfield ahead of Knicks. I again keep ending up with Knicks and Russell Wilson because they are so cheap, and I'm waiting specifically until the last round. But I probably, to be fair, have to put Mayfield ahead of those two.
yeah, that's understandable. I mean, he does have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin still. I know, obviously,
I like McMillan too. I think that's going to be a much better rep than Trey Palmer was.
no lingering hope for our guy Raheem Jarrett.
Well, hey, I'll take Jarrett over Palmer. They can't give Palmer another 700 snaps or whatever it was last year.
No, despite the kind of fluky touchdown in the postseason game, I do tend to agree with you there. But Mayfield, you could do worse at the end of your redraft than him, but it's not.
I think of him
super
as the Goff equivalent. So yeah, I'm ranking both of those guys behind the Genos and Levises. The Cousins is maybe about the same as Rodgers, and Rodgers I'm keeping low because of a few reasons. But one is that I don't think he's going to throw for volume, even in the best case scenario. I think Rodgers' numbers might look shockingly similar to Russell Wilson's.
And to be fair, Rodgers' last full healthy season, he did not look good. Like he was starting to miss stuff that he never did before.
Yeah, it was a rough. I think to be fair to Rodgers, the Packers were still they were in like the first part of their transition to the more complete, mature roster that they're turning into right now. And I think if Rodgers had last year's offense, he would have done quite a bit better than he did his last year in Green Bay. But yeah, I mean he's 41 or whatever. super unreliable guy. I don't know how a person would trust him anyway. So yeah, I'm not trying to end up with Rodgers. It's not really a goal. The only time that I've taken Rodgers, I think, was in my NFFC draft, where it was the last round and I just was kind of didn't care who I picked, and I took him just to be my second quarterback in the last round. So that's where I'll take him, the last round of a 20-round draft.
There you go. That's a good frame there for redraft. Our guy Brendan has a dynasty question. It's a startup. He had the last pick of the first round, first pick of the second. Got Marvin Harrison Jr. and Caleb Williams, so going the younger route. This isn't a reach in the long run, correct? Is what Brendan asks. I think that's a good start, especially in a dynasty startup.
Yeah, I assume it's not super flex, but even in one quarterback, I think Caleb Williams is pretty valuable. Like, for instance, Harrison was the first overall rookie for me, and Caleb was probably the fifth or fourth. So I think he'll run for 300, 400 yards a year and probably be, even this year, one of the better passers in the NFC.
I think so too. It is a super flex for context. So
nice. Well, then you can't. Yeah, that's great.
Just to throw it out there, as far as a parallel is concerned, the RotoWire staff just had a dynasty super flex startup draft, and Caleb went 7th in that one. Marvin Harris. So you're getting 4 picks of profit there relative to our board. Marvin Harrison went a little bit later into the second round. He was 2.5, but I can't quibble with that too much in a dynasty startup. Even with that super flex detail.
And in super flex rookie rankings, I think there's a case to put Caleb number 1. So yeah, I think those two are really good. You're not paying for immediate production, obviously, but for the window that you're building, it's coherent that it could add up to a pretty big sum if you keep stacking talent in that window.
Yeah, and I think if both of their rookie years go the way that we're expecting, then that's going to end up looking really nice for the future. Let's finish off the late round QBs and move over to best player available. These are guys that probably you're not drafting in your traditional redraft leagues, but is there anyone that we missed that you think needs to be on everyone's waiver wire radars as the season begins?
Not really. If May is a backup, keep an eye on him. I believe in him. I think he can run and throw well at the NFL level, but otherwise, I think Darnold could go the whole year being pretty good because quarterbacks don't matter. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, those are the pertinent details. So I think Darnold might be useful. It's just really low floor with McCarthy looming.
Yeah, it's Darnold is risky. I'm more inclined to keep him, I guess, on my redraft waiver radar than best ball, because you could be sinking 8 dead weeks towards the end of the season potentially, but it could work out. It's not like he's overly expensive over on Underdog. And then, are you keeping a close eye on what the outcome is in Vegas as far as that quarterback competition is concerned?
They suck. Those guys suck. Both of them are terrible. Whoever their third quarterback is might be better. I don't know who it is.
There are a couple of mustache guys, so I can't root against them, but I tend to agree that I'll root for them, but I'm not going to be drafting either Gardner Minshew.
They're going to run the ball is what they're going to do.
Yep, and I don't know. Do you see that Zamir White picture?
No.
My man's looking beefy. My man's looking ready for 300 carries.
Well, they might get it, so you better be.
Yeah, exactly. Before we get on to best player available, we've got a couple more messages here. First one from our friends over at Acme Real Fantasy Football. What's with fantasy football scores looking like an NBA All-Star game? Let's get real with Acme Real Fantasy Football. The top pro teams average around 28 points a game. This is how Acme Real Fantasy Football scoring system is based. The system is also very accurate compared to the actual game score. Each team drafts only 9 players, filling the primary positions. Benches are only used for injured and bye-week players. This leaves 200 free agents available to improve your team. Weekly waivers give preference to the bottom team in the standings. League rankings are also changing to keep it competitive the entire season. Acme Real Fantasy Football has a one-of-a-kind playoff format, selecting a new lineup each week. All teams are competing from week 1 through the Super Bowl. 12-team leagues start at only $120. Go to acmerealfantasyfootball.com and sign up today. And we also got a message from our friends over at Fantrax. Is there something you wish your fantasy league had, or features that are missing from your current leagues? Bonus scoring, custom schedules or playoffs, deeper team settings? Well, look no further, because we have you covered with our friends at Fantrax. Fantrax is the most customizable fantasy platform in the industry, offering the greatest fantasy experience for your dynasty, keeper, redraft, and best ball leagues. Fantrax even offers college fantasy football leagues. Definitely recommend checking those out. Those are a lot of fun, really gigantic player universe. In that, if you're only doing 2 QB on college fantasy, you're not doing it right. Go a little further. Start 4 quarterbacks. It's fun. Create or join a fantasy football commissioner league. Invite your friends and dominate your draft this season. Fantrax is the top dynasty fantasy football platform in the industry. Coming from another service, not a problem. Fantrax, it can easily import any of your current leagues and rosters. Ever a trade go wrong or make a mistake in dropping a player? Fantrax commissioner tools allow you to undo any move easily with one simple click. Fantrax is running a special promotion that you do not want to miss. Sign up for free at fantrax.com/RotoWire today to enter for your chance to win tickets to any NFL regular season game, and for you and your entire league, plus $6,000 in spending cash. That's right, tickets for your entire league. Simply create a new league or bring over your existing leagues for more chances to win. Simply go to fantrax.com/RotoWire and sign up today. Fantrax, the home of fantasy sports. We'll roll on to the next strategy here. This one, fairly self-explanatory, and therefore we're not going to spend a ton of time on it, but it is a viable strategy, one worth keeping in mind, and that is the best player available strategy. And essentially the idea there is for you to select the highest ranked player on your draft board, regardless of the position. You stick to your rankings throughout the entire draft. And, if you see this approach through, it ensures that you're consistently adding top talent to your roster. So I think that it's one that definitely makes sense, especially when the ADP or when the draft board itself is kind of falling into your lap. Like, for example, we were talking last week about zero RB versus hero RB and so on. And we reached a point in the 3rd round where I was picking early, and Devin Achane had fallen to me, and I had already taken a running back, but at the same time, I did not like the receivers that were available. They had gotten pushed up throughout the course of the first 2 rounds. And Achane was someone who had an ADP around 20, and I'm getting him at 26, 27, something like that. And it's like, I'm just going to go for it and kind of adjust from there. This strategy, a little bit more intent on just not worrying about your construction so much, and just making sure that you have the best talent every single time, that at least according to your rankings, every time that you're on the clock.
Yeah, so I think this might be one of those things that sound better in theory than they work out in practice. And one thing I'll point out is when you use something like the RotoWire draft software, and a positional run occurs, it'll go in with a preset group of rankings, but the inflation factor has to change over the course of, depending on how people pick. And so the list of what the best values are will change depending on who is picked, rather than stay static throughout the occurrence of the draft. So I think what we all strive for in the end is just kind of picking the most points available, and you could kind of hear that almost as like synonymous with best player available. But you definitely want to you want to pick the players that are going to give you the most unique point upside, which you could read as best player. But you can't, for instance, just go into an underdog draft and take the best player available in your first 4 picks, or else you might end up with 4 running backs.
Yeah.
Because people are just gonna. There's so many people that pick ahead of wide receiver ADP, and that's just kind of what they do in the first 5 rounds, without exception. So inflation is real, and you can end up with bench points and stuff like that if you truly just go best player available. But what you want to do, I think, is just try to keep track of where all the markets are headed, keep track of the various roster compositions that are setting up around the league, and just try to be, and this is not the most actionable advice, easier said than done, all that, but you just want to try to stay in the position where you're kind of like making good picks in each block of the draft. Like you can look all over the draft and see cases of someone like Josh Jacobs going within 2 or 3 picks of James Cook, like just don't be the James Cook person in that sequence. Be the person who's not getting the short end of each stick that's dealt,
Right. So, looking at round by round ADP and, seeing who's going to be available to you when, and, distilling it a little bit. And so like, if you are in that position, like you said, in the 4th round, 5th round, where, you need a running back, and there's 2 that go in that range, or even maybe you could throw a Rashad White in there, make sure that you have your guy. And it's our professional opinion that James Cook should not be that guy. It should probably be
certainly not in half-point PPR.
No. I think that kind of covers best player available. It's just an idea, but like you said, Mario, it's better to be a little bit more flexible than just always taking the top of the respective rankings that you're using, because you could end up with a kind of unbalanced roster and weird bench point scenarios, and being shorthanded at other positions that you do need to start. So bear that in mind. Let's shift gears as we round out the show. Let's talk a little bit about our Scott Fish Bowl drafts. So in your mind, I'm sorry, but not in your mind, but going into this particular Scott Fish Bowl, what is it exactly for those who don't know? And, what are kind of like the unique wrinkles to it? Why is it such this big deal in the fantasy community?
Well, this appears to be Scott Fish Bowl 14. So is that the 14th one?
Yes.
It's taking a leap. Okay. So if 14 years ago, it must have been Scott Fish, who, it is named after and invented the whole thing. I believe it was just like a somewhat smaller scope, just charity league kind of thing that just sort of almost accidentally grew into what it has become at this point. Cause people just, more and more people were interested every year. There was always like waiting list to get in every year. So now it has God knows how many leagues. I honestly have no idea at this point. Is it like, it's gotta be hundreds, right? Like
at least.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know if we're in the thousands at this point or whatever. And you get assigned a league, you compete in that league, like a lot of fantasy formats. There's a tournament playoff scenario at the end, where they can, make a ranking of literally, 1 to 1,000 or whatever, 10,000, however many teams there are now. And I guess each year, at least for a number of years, each year they've changed the format to some kind of new twist. And I don't remember what last year's was, but they changed it a little bit. And this year, at least one of the changes is you only have to start 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 1 receiver, and 1 tight end. And then the rest of the one of the flex spots is super flex. That's been the case for, I think, pretty much the whole time, at least as long as I can remember Fishbowl. And then you can just start flexes the other, whatever, 5 spots in your lineup. And that also includes, I think it's half point per first down for running or receiving by running back or receiver.
Yes.
But tight ends, if they get a first down, I think it's 1.5. So it's basically a tight end premium, but instead of 1.5 PPR, it's 1.5 per first down, something like that. It's basically like slightly tight end premium, super flex. And I happen to think that making it 1 receiver minimum makes it creates an incentive to take running backs much more aggressively than other leagues, because running backs are the only position where you can have a person get 20 carries and 4 catches in the same game. It's the only position realistically where you're going to have 100 plus yards from scrimmage, even if you're not that good of a player. So I'm trying to collect a lot of really good running backs, yes, but also just vaguely competent ones who are near the field. And I'm hoping that I can just go through this season with a one wide receiver, maybe two wide receiver lineup, and then everybody else just like all the running backs are hopefully just on my bench as I need them over the course of the year.
I think my best ball brain got the best of me. I think that your outlining of the scoring details here and the importance of running backs and tight ends, with those premium scoring details.
Well, it's still pick the most points. It's not pick the most running backs. So I just think that it makes totally good math sense to end up with the highest score by picking receivers because they had the highest point total on the board at the time, which could very well be the case in yours or any other league. But it's just I kind of saw it as an opportunity to try to do the zero. I was trying to go both robust running back and zero running back at the same time, and hopefully just get all the running backs myself that way.
So if you have it pulled up, would you mind sharing your first couple of picks or some of your favorite picks that you've made thus far?
Yeah, sorry I don't have a graphic ready to go, but I had the what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8th pick. I took. I knew I was just going to go two quarterbacks because I didn't really feel like thinking through the various scenarios. I knew I couldn't. It wasn't even worth trying. So I took. Also, passing yardage is decreased for points. It's like 1 for every 50 yards and 6
Correct.
points per passing touchdown. So a guy like Russell Wilson could actually be really valuable in this format if he throws like 25 touchdowns this year, even if he only throws for like 2,800 yards.
Right.
So anyway, I targeted guys that I thought would throw touchdowns. CJ Stroud at my pick made that an easy choice because I think he could lead the league in passing touchdowns this year. And at my second pick, even though I'm still a hater as far as the MVP advocacy goes, hate it. I took Brock Purdy in the second round, 4th pick in the second round, because I just expect him to throw 30 plus touchdowns. So 6 points each time. I figure if that's not a bad problem to have at my super flex spot.
No, it is not. It's still the quarterback in the Shanahan offense with, we think, Brandon Ayuk along with Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, and George Kittle. I mean, it's kind of hard not to have success in that particular setup. It's interesting. We both had the 8th pick. I chose that because I wanted to get the Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow combo meal to get rolling, and I was able to pull that off. Luckily, I was a little bit surprised to see Kyler Murray go right before Joe Burrow, but I think maybe in this particular scoring format, that does add up. I don't think it's like a bad pick necessarily, and it certainly worked in my favor as far as getting Burrow was concerned. But moving down a little bit later, I got Garrett Wilson. I was surprised that Garrett Wilson fell to me where he did, even with that 3rd round reversal being accounted for. I got Josh Jacobs, Trevor Lawrence, Cooper Kupp, DeAndre Swift, Hollywood Brown, Calvin Ridley, Brian Thomas, Drake May, Blake Corum, Kendre Miller.
Good running back lineup. You made it sound like you did. There's some people in my league that took like literally 1 or 2 running backs in the first 10, 12 rounds. And I think your running back group is good. I think that sounds like a balanced team, John.
Yeah, it ended up working out. It was definitely dicey. It could have gone a lot worse waiting on running back as long as I did in certain pockets. But, like that, there are just like the tiers that would dry up, where your Najee Harris and your Zamir Whites come off the board, and it's like, well, I'm not taking Jonathan Brooks. I'd rather just have Hollywood Brown and see where that goes. My big shortcoming though is probably tight end. I only have Isaiah Likely thus far. I do have a pick that I just got on the clock for. So,
John, I actually just got on the clock too, and I'm just going to tell you what I did with my subsequent picks. So I went Stroud, Purdy. 3rd round, I go Jonathan Taylor. Evan Ingram is who I took in the 4th round. I was hoping Pitts would make it back. That was stupid. He went like right after I picked the round before, sorry, like half a round before then. Joe Mixon in the 5th, which is a little problematic because him and Taylor have the same bye week. But I solved that problem, John, by let's see, we're in the 15th round, and at this point I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 running backs. I just took Ray Davis in the 15th round, and I have 3 receivers. My 3 receivers are Zay Flowers, Rashee Rice, and Joshua Palmer. And also, I took Brock Bowers as a second tight end way back in the 6th round. So that's the lookout of my team. The other running backs were Singletary, Zach Moss, Chuba Hubbard, Kendre Miller, and then Davis, who I just took.
We love Ray Davis, and I'm coming around on trying to get more and more of Kendre Miller as well. So I think that we're both standing pretty strong at these respective parts of our drafts. Between Mike Gesicki and Keelan Robinson as my next picks, because I think Keelan Robinson, the other wrinkle that we didn't really touch on too much is the kick return, but I'm hoping that he's enough of a secret at this point that I could sneak him through in the 18th. I do need another tight end, and I'll just get Joe Burrow's tight end, and hopefully that ends up working out.
Yeah, Gesicki could get some of those slot reps that used to go to Tyler Boyd, so hopefully that works there. But I think I'm pretty much done at tight end, and I'm just gonna keep taking running backs. Yeah, why not? 6 more rounds, let's do it.
I love it.
6 more running backs.
6 more weeks of winter. All right, that's going to round it up for us here on this edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Again, presented by our friends over at Prize Picks, over at Fantrax, and over at Acme Real Fantasy Football, as well as our hosting service, the Blue Wire Network. For Mario Puig, I'm John McKechnie. Thanks for listening.